The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Mannin Line on Manx Radio. Open line, so whatever you want to talk about today, call 66 13 68. WhatsApp on 166 177. Email studio at manxradio.com. We're trying to get 166 177 text working at the moment. There's an engineer with a very heavy pair of boots giving the computer a kick, but we'll text anyway. We'll see if it gets through. So what do you want to talk about? Yesterday there was a lot of comment on Mannin Line yesterday about, certainly about this proposed ban of large vehicles in speed-regulated settings. This all started because the highways director sent a letter out to local authorities asking them for just their consultation, really, about what to do about large vehicles parking in residential areas. And what it happens, and many people just don't like other people's vans being parked at the bottom of their garden, on the road, or indeed outside their door, or perhaps on a terrace street. So if it's something that concerns you, then by all means get in touch. Lots of people talked about what Bonzo said yesterday about ARA 13, this refuelling thing above the North Irish Sea, and lots of people also telling me that chemtrails are a real thing. If anybody can prove that chemtrails are a real thing, who's putting the chemicals into this airline fuel, what the chemicals actually are, what they're meant to do, and how chemicals from 30,000 feet can land somewhere. And I'd love to know it. I've heard that chemtrails have been in and around people's consciousness for years and years, decades indeed. It's a theory. Let's put it that way. It's a theory. Has anybody ever proved that it's a bit like UFOs? That they must be out there somewhere, but nobody quite knows. And of course, there's a consultation going on in America, a committee going on at about possible UFOs in America. Anyway, by all means, do get in touch and let's see. The messages are coming through now, particularly residential areas, particularly in Governor's Hill. If you buy a motorhome, says this correspondent, 992, make sure you've got room to park it on your own property. People shouldn't be parking work vans in residential areas, full stop, says Pam. Regarding these vehicles being parked overnight, I agree with this, and I think people should be fined. I am sick of work vans being parked in residential areas. And do you think if somebody buys, if you want a motorhome, is it right that you should park it on a residential street? Is it everybody else's bad luck, if you like, that you buy a big motorhome and park it on the street? Or should it only be parked on drives? Any thoughts? By all means, do get in touch. If we want to reduce the rise in cancer, we should stop the New World Order. Can anybody please prove this? Please prove this. It's out there somewhere. Manx Will said that sometimes the sky smells of chemicals. Which chemicals, Will? Do tell me if you can identify the chemicals. 600, Will, please, if you've got a firm reason and a firm piece of fact on what the chemicals are. Certainly if you go down Strand Street on a Friday night, there are certain chemicals you can smell in the air, but they're nothing to do with agriculture and certainly nothing to do with aircraft. I'm sorry, there is absolute proof, says 653, absolute proof there is no such things as chemtrails. It's called science. There is no conspiracy. Do you want us to think that every pilot in the world has a special button they're told to press at certain locations to dump a load of chemicals? I'm sure that if this were the case, at least one pilot would have come forward. There would have been a whistleblower, a chemtrails whistleblower. I've yet to see any firm evidence of chemtrails. I know there's millions and millions of hours and minutes about this on the internet, but then again, there are millions and millions of hours of cats playing with balls of wool. And perhaps they just about have the same meaning. But if you can tell me what are the chemicals that people put that cause chemtrails, then please, by all means, do. We get a lot of aircraft trails over the Isle of Man. There is a very specific reason for that. We're on the direct route between the main airports in England and the United States. They fly over the polar region, so they come straight over us. Also, the top of Snaefell, the air traffic services have got big transmitters up there. So we will get lots and lots of planes flying over us. That's just, I don't think they're targeting us. And targeting us from 30,000 feet, that would be precision chemical bombing, wouldn't it? This weekend it is the Royal Manx, the Southern Agricultural Show. The Royal Manx Show is a couple of weeks away. So when the Southern Agricultural Show gets underway on Saturday, hopefully the weather's going to play ball. The Radio Caroline weekend is a week on Saturday and Sunday in Ramsey, and then the week after that it's the Royal Agricultural Show. Mannin Line's going to be there. Friday the 11th of August we'll have an outside broadcast for the Royal Manx Agricultural Show with a panel of contributors talking about agriculture, the countryside, how we interact with it, what it means, the part that farmers play, the part that government plays, and the part that you play as the consumer. We've heard a lot over the past year about surging prices, whether it's Brexit to blame, whether it's Ukraine to blame, whether it's the World Economic Forum to blame. We thought we'd come a little closer to home, and the Manx National Farmers Union previously warned that farmers are struggling as production costs are increasing to levels not seen before. Now, the chair of the Farming and Wildlife Advisory Group for the Isle of Man thinks the move could take some pressure off.
NFU Mutual has supported the Isle of Man's agricultural shows for over 40 years. They're always great social events for the whole community and an excellent opportunity for us to meet you, our customers. So do come along and meet our friendly team at the NFU Mutual tent for a quote regarding your motor, home or business insurance. Look out for NFU Mutual at this year's agricultural show.
We focus on the capture of fugitive methane gases, processing the gases, bringing it up to vehicle grade 98% methane.
Did you hear this yesterday? In fact, did you go to that meeting last night? There was a meeting about methane gas, and farmers across the Isle of Man could be harvesting methane gas as a means for generating renewable energy. This Cornish company, it's an energy company from Cornwall called Mannin, and they hope the move will enable the agriculture industry to generate electricity from methane. And you know where methane comes from? Well, anyway, generate electricity and power their vehicles. The organisation's business strategy, this is Bennaman's business strategist, is Seamus Gallagher.
Holding those gases in that form, if you like, and then using those gases to create green energy. We have 3 farms currently up and running in Cornwall, and we will have another 17 farms fully commissioned by the end of this year.
In terms of investment, payback and shelf life, what are the sort of figures we're talking there?
It's scalable. It depends on the number of livestock on the farm, let it be poultry, pigs or cattle. So a smaller farm with 40 cows will invest obviously a smaller amount of money as opposed to a 1,000 head dairy operation. But in terms of payback, what we're finding, the current payback is 6 years in the absence of subsidies. That can be pushed out to 10 years, obviously. we're getting a huge amounts of gas which would have been escaping anyway, so we're just capturing what's already there. The shelf life of the equipment will be 20 years. If it's a lagoon that has to be built from scratch, from planning process, getting the civils done, getting a cover on there, the gas capturing equipment, it could be from 300,000 up to 500,000, depending on the size of the farm. If it's a matter of covering an existing slurry tower, then the investment could be between 60 and 100,000.
And what percentage of energy can be generated by capturing methane? Is that a big proportion or something that complements other renewable sources?
It will be a complementary energy provider. The island is obviously looking at solar powers from wind generation, solar generation, offshore and onshore wind generation, obviously.
What do you think about this? If you're in the industry or not, but particularly if you are in the agriculture industry, this is methane, and methane comes from, let's put it politely, it comes from slurry. But you can capture the methane and it can be used. But 100,000 is a big capital cost. Certainly something we'll raise with the NFU and the government when Mannin Line's live from the Royal Manx on Friday the 11th of August. But if you were at that meeting, it was at the Craigna Bar, I understand, then it'll be good to hear from you. John's first with us today. Hi, John.
Hi, good morning. Great to be on the show. Just the point I'd like to raise is around the questions that MHKs are asking in Tynwald. And in particular, Jason Morehouse, he consistently seems to be asking questions that there's no real relevance to, let's say, the running of the island. Recent question was around, how many bottles of water were drank post-TT in schools or provided. I'm not being funny, but, there are bigger issues on the island going on at the moment than worrying about how many bottles of water have been drunk. I don't think he appreciates, or maybe he does, the amount of time and effort that within government they then have to go and run round and find out all this information. It's just a waste of time. Whoever is putting this guy into office, constituents, you need to have a rethink, in my opinion.
It certainly costs money to ask questions within Tynwald and in Keys as well. But John, you said people voted for him, and if he's unpopular, he'll be voted out. But at the moment, he seems popular, and people like the fact. Some people like the fact that he brings up, if you like, detailed questions, not broad brush questions, but questions like that.
Well, I think sort of my view with him is, he asked a number of questions about the steam packet recently, and actually some of the responses, he should have probably already known that. So my frustration with MHKs on occasion, and this is not all of them, is rather than be proactive and try and change the island for the better, they just seemed content with having their name consistently raised in Tynwald, consistently in the press. So it looks like they are making a difference, when in actual fact, they aren't probably delivering anything that they should do. Again, my opinion, but let the voters can take that, whenever the next election is.
Interesting. Okay, John, I appreciate your call.
No problem. Thank you.
Good to hear from you. Nick's on now. Hi, Nick.
Yeah, hello. Hiya. Can you hear me all right?
Loud and clear.
Okay, I've just got a quick thing. I'm at work and I've just been asked to move on, but hang on. About the chemtrails, I think Bonzo was talking about the refueling. That's when you get two planes, one behind the other, where I think June was talking about having planes that are abreast. You can't refuel side by side. So I think that's what he's seeing is a crisscross of contrails, which I've seen as well, when you've got one plane probably half a mile behind the other, but 500 meters to the right or left of it, and you've got another one to the left of that or right of that, and they're spreading it like 5 trails at once. I think that's what June was at. Talking about.
And do you think they are actually abreast, or do you think they appear abreast? Some may be higher in altitude than others.
Yeah. No, yeah, they have to be because of jet wash. That's what I mean. But they are to the right or left of each other, so you will see from below ground level, they'll look like they are equally spaced apart. But whether they're, below or above the aircraft to the left is irrelevant. If they're pouring out something, what they're doing is, what I've heard is it's aluminium oxide or something, and it's in order to create moisture in the air to create rain. or the opposite effect.
Yeah.
But they are fine particles, like parts per million, minuscule amounts, which form clouds or take away them.
Well, I mean, certainly seeding clouds has been done for years and years and years. As to the chemtrail theory, I mean, whether they contain chemicals or biological agents for nefarious reasons.
Yeah,
I mean,
I don't think it's defoliating like they did in Vietnam or anything like that. I mean, it's not going to be Agent Orange or something like that. But I have one other quick thing. I've got to go soon. The wind turbines. I've been reading about those, and apparently they take something like 260 tons of steel per wind turbine, and about 300 tons of ore, plus all the fossil fuels to mine that and smelt it, and they require something like 700 gallons or 2,800 liters of hydraulic oil, and that needs to be changed every 9 months or so. So these are not very economically or environmentally sound for the amount of electricity that they produce, especially if they can't produce them at 100% of the time.
Yeah.
And one other thing I've got to go is about the parking of large vehicles. Well, anybody who has a vehicle has paid their road tax for that specific reason, to be able to park on the road. That's why we pay the tax. And if the government wants to remove that, I think they should have a solution as well as, something to, if they're going to stop it. For example, using brownfield sites to let people park their vehicles. I think Brian had an excellent idea, but he's been shut down. I've got to go. Boss is after me.
Okay.
Anyway, take care. Bye.
I know you're in a hurry. Thanks for that, Nick. Appreciate it at work, getting that done. Alan's with us now. Hi, Alan.
Hello. What I'd like to talk about is about the freedom of the press, what's been happening with Paul Moulton, where Minister Hooper has said that he was a man with a camera on YouTube. And I do think it's behaviour from a minister to put this out on Twitter and then start to delete all those comments. But I do think the Isle of Man Council of Ministers should hold a public meeting, because I think it's getting basically like Putin's Russia, where now you can't ask anything FOI unless you get a threatening letter from a department. So maybe I just don't understand why people like Manx Radio and other news outlets in the Isle of Man have not covered this story. I just find it shocking that, I mean, they've gone for Paul Moulton. Who's going to be next on the list?
I think maybe, Alan, it's because that Paul Moulton isn't covered by statute or law. He's not a traditional broadcaster. He's on the internet.
Yeah, but there's many people, even in the States, are on the internet with their news stories. I mean, even CNN you get online now. What I do think needs to be out, I don't know if Manx Radio want to do it, should do it, is a public meeting, i.e. like a question time, where members of the public can ask the Chief Minister and Minister Hooper questions the way this government at the moment, because I've got no confidence in this government, and I think, there should be some brave MHKs in there for a vote of no confidence in this government, because they are using the reserves willy-nilly when they want to. I mean, the prime example, they've just given the police a 3,000 pay and offered the nurses £1,000. I mean, the nurses did a lot of work on the COVID issue. I mean, they're treating them like second-class citizens. It's disgraceful behaviour.
Okay, all right, Alan, I appreciate that. Thanks for calling today. Good to hear from you. Actually, we can resolve some of those matters, because this coming Monday, Laurie Hooper, MHK, is on Mannin Line, the Minister from the DHSC, the man who's been talking about the Paul Moulton issue and the fact that Mr. Moulton is an online journalist. His content goes on the internet, on the World Wide Web, and Alan was talking about he talked about the press. I'm assuming he meant the media on the Isle of Man. Obviously, the only press we have is Isle of Man newspapers. There are 3 radio stations, all governed by statute, all operating under the law, and all have a licence issued by the Communications and Utilities Regulatory Authority, CURA. So 3FM, Energy, Manx Radio all have licences, and we're governed by statute. We are, if you like, regulated, licensed broadcasters, and the newspapers operate under law. Anyone who broadcasts on the internet or their content goes out on the internet is not. And presumably that's why Mr. Moulton has had the slap, if you like, this this advocate's letter, purely because CURA has no jurisdiction over internet operators. This is a situation that's happening right across the world, in that you can go on the internet and virtually say what you want. As a broadcaster, and certainly as a newspaper, Isle of Man newspapers certainly can't go on and contravene the law because they're subject to legal sanction. And that's the difference. Mr. Moulton operates on the internet, and the broadcasters on the Isle of Man and the newspaper operate under the law of the land. Juan's on now. Hi, Juan.
Have I inspired a new conversation about chemtrails, Andy, this week now?
I'm trying to find out. What's happening with chemtrails.
Well, you and me both. That's why I put the question out there, and it's caused a little bit of a topic now this week. But, you know, in answer to Bonzo yesterday, bless him, I mean, you know, it was a nice little suggestion. I'm looking for an answer. But, you know, he said that this happens over the Isle of Man. Well, you know, I sit in Florida, and the same thing happens there. It's the same format, so it's not just here; it's everywhere. And I'm sure people will send you pictures in and videos, because it is quite common. When you actually look for it, you notice it. I speak to people, and they go, "I didn't even look at that," and then they go, "Oh yeah, that's weird." But,
well, anyway, I mean, all jet engines will leave a water condensation trail, a contrail, if you like, behind them. They're miniature clouds formed by it's the exhaust from the engines.
Absolutely, totally. But there is a difference. You see it once you start looking. You see it yourself. I just let people open their eyes and have a look for themselves and ask the questions. I just look for the answer. That's all. What Alan just said there before, he's quite right, and I've asked this a few times. I think going back to the COVID times when David Ashford was on your programme, an open forum. And I offered them that then. I said, well, I put you 6 people on a table. I wouldn't have to search very far for people who've got relevant questions and points of view to put forward to the government, and have an open forum where people can come in and make their own mind up about things. But they won't do that, will they? Because they're following other agendas, so they don't really have the answers to it when they're cross-questioned. You know, you get sound bites when they come on here for an hour. Well, it's 40 minutes. They come on here and it's sound bites, and you know, if they eat the time away with a long, complicated answer, you haven't got any time for a rebuttal, so they get away quite lightly. So, yeah, let's have the Villa Marina, and let's have the relevant people from different departments there, and the chief executives who are supposed to be the experts, and let's question them, as soon as it's our money that they're willing to spend. And,
but I mean, Juan, politicians on the Isle of Man are more accessible than politicians, I would say, anywhere around the world. You can look in the phone book, and the numbers of the politicians are in there. If you want to lobby a politician or speak to them, you can speak to them. The politicians don't hide away.
No, I totally agree with you, but the chief executives do. And they're the ones that, you know, politicians, they're making the policy, but the chief executives are advising them. So it's the chief executives that we want. I mean, forgive me if I'm wrong, we haven't seen Dane Harrop since the big, shiny conference at the Villa Marina last September. He's not made an appearance in public. And that's what I mean. These people, they wheel them out, make a few observations in an organised manner, and then they're gone again. So they're not available for cross-question at any length. So I agree with you. Politicians are there, but we want people who are advising the politicians and questioning them. So I agree with Alan on that point. Now, going on to this other point of this letter that's gone out about the size of vehicles, 1.8 metres. It's a very nondescript letter. It's just saying the height and length of vehicles. It's not saying whether they're private or work vehicles or anything. So a standard people carrier is about 1.8 meters. So, anyone who's like a one-man business or a workman who's got a semi-high top transit, which would be 2.3 meters, cannot park their vehicles anywhere near their houses. People with a large people carrier, or even if they've got a roof box on it or something, is going to be above them legislation. So I think Jeffrey Robinson's name was attached to this. That's the guy that was in charge of the promenade, I believe.
Well, yeah, he's the director of highways.
Yeah. Well, his name's been attached to this, so maybe he wants to go back and rethink this, because the amount of small businessmen who are going to be affected by this, and where are they going to park the vehicles after that? People need to think of the implications down the line of this. People can't park their vehicles. Where they're going to park them? How they're going to get to them? What time they're going to get to these jobs in the morning? Yeah. There's a load of complications that go down the line with it. And now, just jumping on quickly on two other things quickly. Did you see the report yesterday about the boat fire with the EVs on board?
Yes, it was. Yeah, the one that was going from Germany. It caught fire by Holland, didn't it?
That's right, yeah, and one seaman's been killed on it. So again, it's going to be a situation soon where the insurance companies are going to control what boats carry if this carries on. And I believe now, correct me if I'm wrong, or someone might come on and correct me, that if an EV now is damaged in an accident on the island, it now can't be taken off the island by boat because it is now more problematic being damaged, so it has to stay on the island. Now, well, I'd
heard that as skeet. I don't know. We've not heard that officially from the steam packer that damaged electric vehicles can or can't be taken off the island.
That's basically come from an insurance company, but I stand to be corrected. But that's what I was informed. So again,
well, insurance companies run everything.
Exactly, yeah. And just on a finishing note as well, a Telegraph report this week, not the Daily Mail, unfortunately, Bonzo, it's the Telegraph, but 1,000 smart meters, thousands of smart meters have switched remotely to costlier tariffs in the UK. So there's a question for you. Are we installing a system here that's already doomed to fail somewhere along the line? I think Ofgem are involved in that. It's a decent-sized piece in the Telegraph that was handed to me this week.
OK, all right, appreciate it. Thanks, Stuart.
Cheers, Andy.
All right, 26 minutes before 1, and Sharon dropped me a note in. We unfortunately couldn't get this one to Mr. Cannon earlier on this week. I'd like to ask Mr. Cannon if there are any plans to reinstate our own airline. Manx Airlines was excellently run by Terry Lydiard and team, I add, before British Airways bought it for the Heathrow slot. Since then, the Isle of Man's been at the mercy of several different airlines, and our consideration always seems to come last, says Sharon in St John's. I think British Airways bought Manx Airlines. It was really a strategic purchase. They got the Heathrow slots, but British Airways had tons of the darn things anyway. But we get the point. And Sharon, thanks for raising that point. Open skies was always the mantra. Do you remember? Let's run our open skies policy. So we let anybody come in who wants to run, and then it can even be predatory pricing where one airline runs up against another on a route and puts them out of business. And we always sometimes seem to come at the end. Now, the model is Aurigny. The Guernsey-owned airline, Aurigny, own theirs, and they hop around the Channel Islands and also have routes into London. Now, it has to be said, Aurigny loses £7 million a year, mainly, I think, on the Alderney to Guernsey route, and there's particularly choppy water between Alderney and Guernsey, so that hopper really has to run all the time. But it does cost money to run your own airline. It's not an easy thing to... It sounds easy, but it's not an easy thing to do, and it will require a capital outlay. Whether or not it's something the government is keen, anxious, or even bothered about doing, we don't know. Whenever it's mentioned, it's never really greeted with enthusiasm. But we did buy the steam packet, and we have bought a brand new boat. Just briefly, I just want to talk about this, the cost that farmers are facing before we go on to our outside broadcast from the Royal Show. And certainly it'll be the talk this weekend of the Southern, a lot about surging costs. The Manx NFUs warn farmers are struggling as production costs are increasing to unseen levels. Times are tough in agriculture. So here is the chair of the Farming and Wildlife Advisory Group for the Isle of Man.
The challenge to stay afloat to produce food at the moment is enormous, with the escalating costs that agriculture has faced in the last couple of years, whether it's fuel, whether it's fertilisers or any imported feeds and other imports, everything that we bring onto the island to help produce the daily pint or the meat for the meat plant or what have you. We have additional inputs, a lot. We try and rely on local resources as far as possible, but there's still some necessary inputs to be brought in across the boat. And obviously, if fuel and energy is one of those big three, if we can actually harness on-farm energy to lessen that burden, then it might give a greater sustainability to the industry.
Times are tough, and they aren't getting any easier for people in the world of agriculture. I just wonder what your thoughts are.
Choose Manx Glass and Glazing for supply only or supply and installation of a wide range of quality products. All types of glazing work undertaken, plus fabulous doors and conservatories in both traditional and contemporary styles. And whether UPVC or aluminium, you can be sure of excellent workmanship and guarantees at Manx Glass and Glazing. See for yourself when you visit the showroom on Snugborough Trading Estate. Manx Glass and Glazing. Quality and style since 1986.
NFU Mutual has supported the Isle of Man's agricultural shows for over 40 years. They're always great social events for the whole community and an excellent opportunity for us to meet you, our customers. So do come along and meet our friendly team at the NFU Mutual tent for a quote regarding your motor, home or business insurance. Look out for NFU Mutual at this year's agricultural show.
When you save a little money, it means a lot these days.
If you're looking for bathrooms and tiles, you'll always find something new in store at Pacesetter. For surprisingly affordable prices and excellent choice, search online for Pacesetter Douglas. Or better still, visit the Pacesetter Bathroom and Tile Showroom on Harris Terrace and see the new styles in store.
You can get the best of everything, where the price is twice as nice.
From our castles to our cottages, our museums, and the Great Laxey Wheel. You'll find hidden treasures around every corner when you visit a Manx National Heritage Site. Fill your summer making treasured memories with Manx National Heritage. Sites now open every day. By visiting, you help protect our treasured island for generations to come. Plan your visit today at manxnationalheritage.im.
FC Isle of Man are back for the 2023-24 season, and they're ready to kick off their new NWCFL Premier Division campaign this weekend on Manx shores. The Ravens take on Wythenshawe Town at the Bowl on Saturday night, hoping to get their latest campaign off to the best possible start against one of last season's big hitters. Join me, Rob Pritchard and Tony Meppen for FC Isle of Man versus Wythenshawe Town this Saturday, kicking off at 6 p.m. Manx Radio will be providing full live match commentary on our DAB and AM 1368 channels.
The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
20-1 now, and we got Chris with us. Hi, Chris.
Hi, good afternoon. Your conspiracy theorists on the radio on about these chemical trails. Well, if you look back to World War II, when the B-17s were doing their high-altitude bombing missions, they emitted 4 contrails from their engines. It's all to do with air temperature and heat emitting from the engines. Because somebody's picked up, so it's chemical. It isn't chemical. It's called contrails, right back from Second World War.
So why do you think some people are obsessed with the fact there are chemicals inside the contrails?
Well, because chemical contrails are formed above, say, 32,000 foot. It's all to do with the upper atmosphere temperature as well. I mean, you can get business executive jets flying at 42,000 feet, and they make a very fine trail because they've only usually got 2 or 3 engines. But normal passenger aircraft, from when they leave Heathrow across the Isle of Man, they're about 36 38,000 feet. On a clear day, you'll see them as clear as anything. It's not chemicals. And those Bonzo, Bonzo ought to stick to things he knows about. Flight refuelling, you only see happening out over the North Sea, because the RAF send aircraft from Bryce Norton, and they do, on flight radar, you'll see like a paperclip pattern. They go round and round and round, waiting for the typhoons to link up. You know, I mean, people that don't know anything about it shouldn't spread rumours and pick up rumours from the internet, because it's not true. There's no chemicals up there.
And again, Chris, what interests me is why some people want to think there are chemicals inside contrails. Why would anybody want that to be a reality?
Well, that lady, must be going back before COVID. She used to come on very regularly talking about chemtrails. She had in her head that there were chemicals. They're not chemicals, it's exhaust, and it only happens at certain temperatures and altitudes. And people are picking this up, and it's not, it is a conspiracy, isn't it? Conspiracy theory. But, you know, people that don't know what they're talking about shouldn't be voicing their opinion. And it's happened quite frequently on your programme. Unfortunately, I don't phone up anymore because I was accused of being a cockney for pronouncing Domain Road wrongly back before the COVID time, so I haven't bothered. But when this has got quite, I don't know what to say. It's not fair that people are spreading all untrue rumours. They've got to study. They said Second World War, all the bombers and the Spitfires are doing dogfights at high altitude. They all trailed. If you look at any World War II films about high bombing missions, the B-17s and that, because they flew very high, they all were trailing 4 trails out the back of their engine exhaust. Okay?
Yeah, that's great, Chris. You're forgiven, by the way, about Domain Road.
Yeah, I know, but I'll never forget that day. I was shouted off as a cockney and told me where to go.
All right. Thanks for calling today. We appreciate it. I want to go to... it's Bonzo's with us now. Hi, Bonzo.
Hello there, yes. I'm hearing a couple of the previous callers there, June and the previous caller to that, and of course your previous caller there. With chemtrails and conspiracy theories and... if you look at your studio email, you'll find that I've sent you a reference to a chart, and that should bring you up a map on something called ADSB Exchange.
Yes, I've just found you. Yes, got that one, yes.
A flight tracking thing.
Yeah.
If you click that link, it should come up with a big picture of the Isle of Man.
Yes, indeed it does.
And a very, very big blue box that runs all the way up the east coast of the Isle of Man.
Okay, yeah.
Which has got AARA 13 in it. Yeah?
Yes, keep
which
talking.
Which is the air-to-air refuelling zone I was telling you about.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and as your previous caller was saying, yes, they fly a defined pattern within that, and then they refuel things. And they don't just refuel fighter aeroplanes as well. I don't know if you've ever seen you must have seen, the big propeller transports that come and do practice approaches into Ronaldsway, the A400s.
Yes, seen those.
Yeah. It practices refueling those as well. So that's why there's 3 relatively big aeroplanes, the Voyager tanker and these 2 relatively big aeroplanes in lockstep. There's the other thing as well. Oh, yes, when it comes to refueling areas, Joan, perhaps look at the chart. There are loads of refueling areas around Florida, and that's not to even start to mention all the civil air traffic around Florida. So, as in airliners, at 30,000, 40,000 feet. So, keep watching the skies, Joan. And there are also other issues of, you were saying to one caller, I think, about whether they thought that the aeroplanes in lockstep was a matter of perspective and that they were aircraft at different heights. Well, yes, they are, because you have a system called airways, which are controlled kind of lanes of airspace that airliners go up and down, and they are separated, like cake layers, so that essentially every 10,000 feet, even numbers are flying east-west, and odd numbers are flying west-east. So you get a separation. So you get two aeroplanes that will be flying, along the same airway, in the same direction, but one will be 20,000 feet above the other, or 20,000 feet below the other, whichever way you want to see it. So, that kind of explains that. Now, going on to what seems to be something of the war against Paul Moulton. Yes, Laurie Hooper is going to be on agenda on Monday, which will be very interesting because I gather that Paul Moulton himself will be on Perspective on Sunday. So let's see what Laurie Hooper has to say there. But the whole gamut, the whole kind of theme of how the Isle of Man government approach things is defensive, defensive, defensive. No, this can't be it. No, and if you say it is, we'll set the lawyers on you. That's just ridiculous. I think when a government is starting to face these levels of very rightly held criticism, what they need to do is start providing answers and not just providing excuses and diversions. Looking at Alf Cannon a couple of days ago and looking at the video of him responding to your questioning, he looked extraordinarily evasive. And at times, I don't think he understood some of the questions that you were actually asking. When you have a chief minister who doesn't understand what a national policy directive is, then you're in trouble.
Well, next Monday, Laurie Hooper's on Mannin Line, so we can ask Laurie Hooper to his face exactly where he stands on this.
Well, exactly, yes, and indeed, of course, he can then respond to whatever Paul Moulton will be revealing.
Okay, all right.
On Sunday.
All right, appreciate it, Bonzo. Thanks for calling. Good to hear from you. Regarding, Juan said... heard the reasons why radio stations aren't making the issue of Mr. Moulton and the situation. The matter is Paul Moulton is being silenced by our Putin-like government. Well, I don't think Mr. Cannon's ever poisoned anybody with a cup of tea, so that's your words. A government that's the most useless, ineffective government that I can remember. Funnily enough, they say that about most governments, but we take the point, Juan in Ballasalla. Regarding Jason Morehouse, I'm more than happy for him to be my free-thinking MHK without having to bow to controlling Council of Ministers setup. So the dialogue goes on. So yes, next Monday, the 31st, last day of July, Laurie Hooper, MHK, Minister for the DHSC, is going to be on Mannin Line. Actually, a week today, Chris Thomas, former DOI Minister, is going to be on Mannin Line. So we'll hear Mr. Thomas and his views. A week after that, we're at the Royal Manx Agricultural Show. Oh, and just before that, I mentioned Jason Morehouse. On Monday, the 7th of August, Jason Morehouse and Tim Glover will be on Mannin Line. It's going to be in Arbury, Castletown and Maloo, MHK Mannin Line on Monday, the 7th of August.
Heating oil for homes, powering farms and businesses, keeping you moving with petrol stations across the island. Ellen Vannin Fuels. Call us on 844000.
Ramsey Garden Centre opens 7 days a week for roses, shrubs, trees, perennials and an array of pond plants. Or if it's fire pits or solar lights, there's never been a better time to visit Ramsey Garden Centre.
Welcome to the Miller Chaps of Ramsey Summer Sale, where you'll find fabulous reductions throughout the store, from beds and flooring to sofas, cane furniture and accessories, rugs, pictures, mirrors and even wallpapers. Plus, the friendly Miller Chaps team are here as always with a warm welcome and expert help and advice when needed. Don't miss the Miller Chaps of Ramsey Summer Sale, now on.
Creating a home where you'll love to be. Millie Chaps of Ramsey.
Experience a true celebration of island life, where farming comes first at the 2023 Southern Agricultural Show. With 2 full days of local entertainment, livestock exhibits, local traders and more. With a new showground layout and new demo area including live farm machinery displays. And we're right on the bus route, no need to drive. The Southern Agricultural Show, 29th and 30th July, Orisdale Farm, Ballasalla. Kids go free. It's a show not to be missed. Supported by Holmes & Davidson Opticians and your nation station Manx Radio, the official media partner of the Southern Agricultural Show.
This evening at 6, it'll be Shark Lay.
It's amazing that we've managed to bring them to the Isle of Man.
My biggest challenge is organising everything, and I rely on an awful lot of people.
I think the secretary's role is infinitely more important than the president's.
I grew up showing dairy cows, so I do like a lot of cows.
Find out more this evening at 6 in Shark Lay.
The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
9 minutes to 1. Sharon's with us. Hi, Sharon.
Hi, Andy. I just want to let you know about when you were saying about you can get in touch with members of the government. I'll put it loosely, MHKs. I will go back to the actual Larry himself. He wouldn't answer my call when I rang him last year. When you had the Chief Minister on last year, and I spoke with him on your show, and he was going to meet with David. David tried to catch him for a full week, and he gave him 5 minutes in the corridor and told him it really had nothing to do with him. The director of the housing, Daniel Looney, I spoke with him down in the housing in November, and he personally was going to take care of my issues. Now, unfortunately, through my health, I wasn't able to get in touch with him. 2 weeks ago, I rang, and for a full week, his secretaries were putting me off, telling him he was busy, and we will ring you back. And on the Friday, I got a phone call after I was speaking with David, and David actually emailed him. I received a call from his colleague called Marie, who still said that he was busy and unavailable, and as I said, I'm busy and I'm not very available all the time either. So my point really is they won't answer your phones, and they're not that easy to get in touch with, even if they're in the book.
How far are you away from getting your issues resolved, Sharon?
Nowhere. And I'm fighting for the rights that I'm entitled to for 4 years. And the only one that is helping me is David Ashford, personally.
And he is he doing that all the time? He's not let go of the situation or anything?
No. He's not, and he will not let go of it. He will not let go of it. He's given me his word on that. And the thing is, you try to speak with these people, and as the person said, they'll talk to you face to face, but they won't do nothing.
Okay, all right. Sharon, just keep us up to speed with that, will you?
I'll do my best, yeah, I'll do my best. But as you say, time is ticking on, you know. But they're not so forthcoming in answering their telephones and willing to meet with you.
All right, Sharon, good to hear from you. 6 minutes before 1 on Manx Radio. You mentioned earlier methane capture in your programme. 2 years ago, I lived in Germany. And almost all the farms in Germany capture methane. The slurry with the methane removed is then mixed with water and spread on fields for fertiliser. It's a system that works. It's worked in Germany for years. Surely we can do it here. A Harbour Road in Onken overnight parking last night, 3 Manx Telecoms vans and 2 Manx Utilities vans. That's a very good point. I wonder whether the government's going to include their own vehicles in this proposed ban of big vehicles parking in residential areas. Got a note in from Carrie, said, you mentioned a wee while ago about media opportunities on the Isle of Man and what was happening. Well, I'll tell you, the fact that we used to have lots of films filmed on the Isle of Man and television series, and the fact that show Maryland was shot elsewhere and not on the Isle of Man, although it purported to be the Isle of Man, seemed like a missed opportunity. The media community on the Isle of Man has been invited with representation from the government to visit the Liverpool Film Office facilities. Now, the LFO is one of the oldest film offices in the UK and has grown the sector dramatically over the 30 years it's been operating continually. The LFO apparently is keen for the Isle of Man to be allied with it as a production and location offering. Now, Liverpool's been the production site of all 6 episodes of Peaky Blinders. Batman was shot in part there, Mission Impossible, and hundreds of other feature films and TV series. In fact, there's currently a 6-episode television series in development which is set in Liverpool and the Isle of Man, and a group of island-based business investors have funded the development. They put their own money in. The production company will ultimately make the series. Our AAA-rated UK production company have already received expressions of interest in the series itself from a UK national broadcaster. The story is predominantly set in the Isle of Man, and the amount of shooting taking place here will entirely depend on the competitive incentives that are available. And that's the crux, the competitive incentives that are available. We were really first in with the Isle of Man Film Commission, and we got lots of films here because we gave competitive incentives. In fact, we got involved and owned part of Pinewood Studios for a while and made money on it, quite a considerable amount of money. So you just wonder, when the Chief Minister was talking about, new businesses coming to the Isle of Man, well, we had a thriving media business for many years. Do you think it could be the time for it to come back? I'll keep you up to speed with what's happening in that. And thanks to Ben Hartley on the phones today. Back tomorrow, open line.
WINT.